Is the alien abduction encounter of Armando Zubaran one of the most important in history? It is certainly one of the most detailed. Rather than just being on board an otherworldly vehicle under duress and strapped to a table before being returned a short time later, Zubaran's encounter would stretch over multiple days and would see him experience life on board the spacecraft in the same way the extraterrestrial crew members would. According to the account, in the early hours of one January morning of 1954 at around 2 a.m., Armando Zubaran was driving along a road between Mexico City and Acapulco on his way to a meeting with a business partner the following day. He was hoping if he drove through the night, he would arrive at his destination just before dawn. As he was making his way along the winding roadways, he suddenly began to feel an intense tiredness. In fact, more than feeling tired, he began to feel as though he was slipping into a severe state of lethargy. Worried he would lose control of the vehicle, he pulled the car to the side of the road. He took a moment to refocus and then raised his head toward the windscreen in order to set off once again. However, there in front of him was a scene he couldn't quite believe. A short distance from his car was a brilliantly lit object in the middle of the road. Even more alarming, several strange men, each wearing the same overall-type clothing, were standing on the road outside the object. He remained in his car watching the scene in front of him. Then, without recalling how, he was suddenly outside of the car and walking towards the glowing craft. At each side were the strange men, seemingly guiding him to the object, which he stepped onto. As he looked around inside the futuristic vehicle, he blurted out a question, asking why they had chosen to take him. To his surprise, one of them answered. He was told that he was neither the first nor would he be the last person to be taken from Earth for testing, adding that they always attempted to choose the best people to transmit their message to the wider population. After going through several details of his life, which he claimed were displayed on a screen like a television in front of him, he was walked around the craft by one of the strange men. He was told that during this walk, he was free to ask any questions he wished. He was also informed that they were now no longer on Earth, but were traveling through space. Zubaran would recall several specific details from his conversation with this apparent extraterrestrial entity. And what is particularly interesting is that many of the details of the craft's propulsion and how it traverses space resonate very nicely with whistleblower testimony that would surface decades later, perhaps most specifically that from Bob Lazar. Zubaran would offer, for example, that the craft he was on operated using a gravity repulsion system. This system would scan space ahead of them and then dispel any objects in their path. It would then bend space-time to it before releasing it again, which would move the craft with the section of space that had been bent towards it. In total, he would spend several days on board the craft, eating, sleeping, and washing as the crew did. For example, he would state that the shower system on the ship was similar to being covered in warm air that gradually increased in strength before changing to damp air that impregnated the skin. Liquid soap was then applied to the body, which was blasted dry, leaving the body clean. He further recalled how their diet, by and large, was very similar to ours and featured a combination of vegetables, starches, and grilled meats. They also drank many different fruit juices and ate a particular fruit that was similar to a mango. What is perhaps interesting about this last detail is that some researchers, perhaps most prominently Timothy Good, have asserted that many UFO encounters feature extraterrestrials examining and taking samples of many plants, particularly fruit processing ones. Might the fact that fruits apparently feature so heavily in their diet be the reason for this? Another thought-provoking detail offered by Zubaran was that the provisions for the crew would arrive on the ship through telepathy. Essentially, they would think what they required into existence. Once more, this had the echoes of the legends of Ptah, the ancient Egyptian creator god, who was said to have imagined the world into existence, and he did so from a winged chair.
Oh, hey, Maddie, how's it going?
Hey, Brandon. It's been going good. How have you been?
I've been good. It's been a long day, but I'm glad you guys are still open.
Yeah, I'm glad we're open too. How can I help you?
When open signs are rare, talk to a teller. Options, we got 'em.
Might the winged chair have been some kind of advanced technology that changed thoughts into physical manifestations? We should also keep in mind some of the recent findings of quantum physics that revolves around the notion of particles not physically existed until a person physically observes them. There were, however, further, even more mind-blowing revelations. They would speak to Zurbaran of an ideology of collaboration over competition. This has led to 3,000 years of utopia in their society. Of more interest, this was largely due to the teachings of the beloved number 9, or the Master. What is interesting about this mentioning of a beloved number 9 is that during the channeling experiments of the United States government under Project Penguin, they claim to have made contact with an otherworldly entity from the reaches of the cosmos calling itself the 9, who was an eternal presence that watched over humanity. Was this the same entity as the beloved number 9 that Zurbaran's abductors spoke of? Following the several days he spent in space, Zurbaran was returned to his car at the roadside. To his disbelief, no time whatsoever had passed on Earth. Unsure what to do, he would continue on his way to his pre-planned business meeting, which went ahead as if nothing out of the ordinary had taken place, which of course to everyone else it hadn't. Amazingly, a second incident occurred 15 years later in 1969 just outside of Mexico City. According to the account, Zurbaran pulled over to the roadside in order to give a ride to a hitchhiker. To his amazement, the individual revealed himself to be one of the crew members from his encounter a decade and a half previously. Unfortunately, that is all that is known about this second meeting, with no other details on record. It is an encounter, however, that was clearly instigated by the extraterrestrials themselves. Another example of pre-planned, targeted intervention. We might contemplate how many other times these meetings have taken place, meetings Zurbaran might simply not recall. There are several intriguing details and points we can take away from the encounters of Armando Zurbaran. Not least that he was purposely targeted by these otherworldly beings. Whether he made good on spreading the aliens' message, other than speaking of his encounter, of course, remains unknown. It is perhaps some of the details left out of the account that lends it the most credibility. There was no mention of his abductor's home planet, for example, at a time when many alleged abductees were claiming contact with beings from Venus or Mars. He also made no effort to cash in on his encounter, or more specifically, the alleged messages from these aliens, something a charlatan surely would have done. Might we assume that many others like Armando Zurbaran have been targeted and abducted by these same extraterrestrials? We should also note that the extraterrestrials in this account are decidedly human-like, and not at all like the grey alien entities that would feature so prominently in alien abduction cases of the 1970 onwards. Might we take from this, then, as many researchers, investigators, and whistleblowers have put forward, that multiple races of alien beings are visiting Earth and have been doing for some time? And what should we make of the mention of a master entity, a beloved number 9? At the time of Zurbaran's encounter, knowledge of the Project Penguin channeling experiments, much less what was revealed in them, was not in the public arena. Might these extraterrestrials living in a utopia under the guidance of this 9 be attempted to bestow similar values onto humanity through the teachings and then subsequent interactions of the abductee following that? We might also contemplate if we accept that these human-like extraterrestrials and grey aliens are different civilizations altogether, whether there's a long, drawn-out war taking place, one that has been raging for thousands of years, and that is for the minds or even the souls of humanity. The legends of good versus bad and even angel versus demon perhaps take on a new meaning when viewed with an extraterrestrial presence in mind. Could it really be that humanity is part of a cosmic battle that has been fought for longer than we can imagine, with ourselves at the center for reasons even we can't fully understand or appreciate? Has this constant war been written off as legends and tales of heaven and hell and God versus the devil? Indeed, it just might prove to be the case that the account of Armando Zuberan and ones like this are of much more importance than even some UFO researchers might realize. They might not only have much to tell us about the UFO and alien question, but could also reveal a fuller picture of our history, our present, and the true nature of our collective reality.
Their future and yours starts where great teachers are made. Apply free at wgu.edu.
Keenan Long with Champ Pro Sports coming at you with the brand new Gauntlet shoulder pad line. Leading things off, we have the Gauntlet 1, which has a low-profile forward cant design. This shoulder pad is for grade school and junior high players. The Gauntlet 1 features the shock rail protection system, which goes over the corrugations in the shoulder arch plate to reduce impact. Also on the Gauntlet 1, we have a steel arch spring, which helps the shoulder pad keep its shape through gameplay. Finally, we have a 1-inch wide elastic strap with T-hooks for easy on-off. Now with all Gauntlet shoulder pads, you can remove the soft padding for easy cleaning. You can also add back plates to any size. So head on over to champrosports.com and check out the Gauntlet 1 today.
What makes the alien abduction of Erwin Law particularly intriguing is the number of details that are usually found in paranormal cases of hauntings and poltergeist activity. At the same time, it is heavily suggestive of an organized abduction program that sees a person perhaps abducted multiple times during their lifetime, and one that uses alien implant devices to monitor and seemingly target those they choose to abduct. In the early hours of March the 9th, 1993, at a little after midnight, Erwin Law was asleep with his wife in their home in northern Germany when he awoke due to a sudden intense pain in his lower spine. He would venture from the bedroom and seek out a strong painkiller before returning to bed in an attempt to go back to sleep. However, by the time he returned, his wife was now also awake. And what's more, they could both hear a strange buzzing sound seemingly coming from outside the house, a sound that Law would later describe as being metallic. As the couple remained still, attempting to locate the source of the sound, a glowing, round object suddenly became visible in the sky through their bedroom window. The object hovered a short distance away, just above the nearby trees, and it was so bright that the entire street, including their house, was now awash in its bright neon-type glow. Even more bizarre, as the husband and wife stared out of their window at this truly curious aerial anomaly, they each noticed a strange and unpleasant metallic taste overtake their mouths. At this point, Erwin went to climb out of bed once more. However, when he did so, he realized he was unable to move his legs. He turned to his wife, the confused and frightened look on her face telling him that she was experiencing the same thing. Then, as they sat upright, helplessly in their bed, a yellow light began flashing on and off outside their house and continued to do so for around 30 seconds. Then, the light stopped, and the disc-shaped object suddenly went into motion, zipping past their bedroom window and disappearing into the distance. Almost immediately after the craft had gone, both the Laws were able to move once again. Now unable to sleep though, each of them got out of bed and discussed just what they had witnessed. However, around half an hour later, the curious humming sound returned. This time though, the sound was coming from the back of the house. Both of them rushed to the back window of the bedroom. As they looked out, they could see the disc-shaped craft only several hundred feet away, and it was heading straight for them. As it got closer, they would recall how its silver exterior shimmered with all the colors of the rainbow, while on the underside they could see 3 bright lights shining downward. The futuristic craft continued towards them, Then, when it was a matter of feet from colliding with their property, it simply evaporated, as if it had dissolved into thin air. Just like that, it was gone. The pair looked out into the night. It was now peaceful and serene, as if nothing out of the ordinary had ever taken place. They each contemplated just what they had witnessed. The following day, Erwin would contact the local newspaper and offer them details of what he and his wife had seen and experienced the previous evening. The newspaper ran a story of their encounter on the following day, which prompted 25 other witnesses to contact Erwin to state they too had seen a similar object on the same evening, including an entire bowling team returning home from a match. Given the sheer number of witnesses that corroborated that something strange was over the town that evening, there was no possibility that the incident could be put down to a joint hallucination between Erwin and his wife. Frustratingly, though, while the other witnesses were happy to discuss their sightings with Erwin privately, none wished to talk about them publicly and put them on the official record. One UFO researcher who had gotten wind of the case, Dr. Hatwig, would ask Erwin if he believed he had been intentionally targeted by the UFO. He replied that he believed that he had, offering that it was hovering right outside the bedroom window as if the occupants knew exactly where he was. The events that would follow the sighting would appear to confirm this, and they were bizarre and unsettling events indeed. The day after the incident, at around 4 p.m., while he and his wife were watching television with their young daughter, there was a sudden flash like a photo bulb went off in the room, followed by a crackling sound. On that same evening at around 10 p.m., a loud, ominous banging was heard coming from one of the wardrobes upstairs. When Erwin went to check, flinging the wardrobe doors open, the banging suddenly stopped. The wardrobe was empty of anything but clothes. However, a short time after shutting the doors and leaving the room, the disturbing banging began again. These types of eerie happenings continued on and off for several weeks. Erwin would also suffer from increasingly intense pain in his lower back. Then, by chance one morning, he noticed two strange marks right at the base of his spine. When these marks were examined by a doctor, two black spots were visible under them. He was booked to have a CAT scan to examine the markings more closely. However, before the procedure could go ahead, the two black lumps came out of his back. Erwin attempted to preserve these so they could be examined. However, by the following day, they had each melted away into nothing. We might note that this detail of implants dissolving a short time after being removed or having fallen from a person's body shows up in many other cases involving these extraterrestrial devices. Erwin Law, for all that had happened to him, declined the opportunity to undergo hypnotic regression. And while it is understandable that some people do not wish to unlock memories their brain has hidden from them, or that they simply don't trust the authenticity of such procedures, it's perhaps a shame that any further potential information will likely remain locked away forever. Just what had happened to Erwin Law that spring night in 1993? Was he the victim of alien abduction? If not on the night of the sighting, at some other point in his life? After all, some
It's not just the mattress, but your whole sleep setup that's wrong. Ashley can literally fix all of that. They've got everything you need for real rest. From cooling mattresses and zero-gravity bases that take the pressure off your back to full sleep systems. Imagine a bed that massages your back, charges your phone, and helps with your spine's alignment. That's exactly what you get with Ashley's sleep-adjustable bases. Better sleep doesn't have to wreck your budget. Ashley has comfort options at every price. If you've been thinking about upgrading, test out the most popular brands before you buy, like Nectar and DreamCloud. Shop Ashley today.
Someone or something had to have placed the strange black devices into his lower back. Might the abduction have taken place before he awoke in order to obtain the painkiller? And could the other encounters have also taken place? We might recall that Irwin very much believed that the UFO had targeted him specifically. We might also contemplate just why an alien race, presumably far advanced from ourselves and from elsewhere in the universe, would be so concerned with very specific members of the human population. Indeed, why do they appear to target certain people and have little interest in others? Might it be a certain blood group, a certain level of overall fitness, or perhaps simply, after random selection, a person is then tracked and abducted repeatedly throughout their lives? Or might we find that Irwin's family, going back generations, have also been victims of alien abduction, and he is simply the latest in a long line of studies and examinations going back to his first unfortunate ancestor when this bizarre program first began? And what should we make of the many paranormal incidents that occurred following the sighting of the apparent alien aircraft? Might the electrical interference with appliances and gadgets be something to do with the strange implants that had been placed in Irwin's lower back? Or might UFOs and their occupants have a more paranormal explanation than many others might think? Why, for example, did the disc-shaped object appear to dissolve into thin air, much in the same way that people might describe a ghost or spooky manifestation vanishing right before their eyes? Might what we know as ghosts, UFOs, and aliens exist and come from the same realm of existence? Above all else, we might consider just what the agenda and end goal is of the apparent alien race behind Irwin Law's encounter might be, and what it might mean for humanity as a whole. Just why are they tracking people with strange devices inserted discreetly into their bodies? Devices that would appear to dissolve away when removed, leaving no proof of their existence. Are these interventions for our benefit? Or might we find the agenda to be much more malevolent, a discovery we are perhaps in danger of making all too late if we fail to understand and decipher encounters such as Irwin Law's and many others like this that continue to happen today? Was an entire family abducted from their vehicle on a lonely road somewhere in Georgia as they traveled from Tennessee to Florida in 1968. The Falcon family, a father, mother, and their 4-year-old son, Celestian, were traveling from Tennessee to their would-be new home in Florida, the result of Celestian's father's sudden transfer to the Sunshine State by the military. While they made their way along a road somewhere in the state of Georgia, Celestian noticed a strange glowing object in the sky following them no more than 200 yards away. The young boy watched the object for several moments, and when he heard his mother let out a sharp scream, he realized that she had seen it too. At around the same time, the object began to move closer to their moving car. Celestian noticed that there were several large red lights on its underside, while on the top half came a paler glow that appeared to emanate from several windows. He also noticed how other motorists were speeding up to get away from the strange object, or even performing U-turns to go the other way. All, that is, except one vehicle which came to stop at the side of the road a short distance away. As Celestian watched this car, he noticed that the engine of their own vehicle had suddenly cut out, and they came to a stop a short distance away. He noticed his father looking in the rearview mirror, watching both the obscure object now hovering a short distance away and the other motorist behind them. With that, his father reached for his gun from inside the glove box and opened the car door. The instant his father stepped foot outside the vehicle, the object moved from where it was to directly over him. His father rushed back inside the car and attempted to start the engine several times, all of which failed. As this was happening, Celestian's mother pushed him further down into the back seat, telling him to remain still and not to make a sound. Even from where he sat, however, he could still see clearly out of the back seat window of the vehicle. He could see the other car that had pulled over to the side of the road just before them, and he noticed that the motorist, like his father, had also gotten out of his vehicle. Then, from out of nowhere, several strange alien creatures, each around 5 feet tall, approached and surrounded the man. Celestian watched as the unfortunate man struck out at one of the creatures with what appeared to be a tire iron. Before he could make contact, though, one of the figures touched a bizarre silver prod to his body, which clearly and immediately paralyzed him. They then proceeded to wrap the man and his girlfriend in strange silver blankets before sending them into the air and into their awaiting craft.
Save big on select home decor at Hobby Lobby, with pieces that make it colorful, comfortable, and stylish. A small space can still feel like home. Save on select home decor at Hobby Lobby.
I'm gonna give you guys a little quick preview. Come here, check this out. We're going crazy on this stuff tonight. We got entire PCs on the show. We got tablets. You can even get sealed Surface laptops. That's brand new. Listen,
As you watch the scene unfold a short distance away, a bright pink light suddenly shined down on their own car. A moment later, the car door opened and a bizarre-looking hand reached inside. At this point, Celestian blacked out. When he awoke, he appeared to be inside the spacecraft. And of more concern, he had been separated from his family, who remained together in another part of the room. He could still hear his mother screaming hysterically. The next thing he realized, a reptilian-like alien was carrying him down a set of stairs and into another large room. This one had large windows on one side and an operating light table in the middle. When he managed to glance out of the window, he could see the road they had been driving on outside. When he cast his eyes back around the room, however, he was met with a particularly grim sight. Against the walls, including beneath the windows, he could see row upon row of jars that contained human fetuses. There were also several doorways that led out of this main room. For reasons he couldn't understand, he knew these rooms were cold storage rooms like walk-in refrigerators. He noticed his family had also been brought into this room. His mother, still very much hysterical, was placed on the table and a large silver needle was used to inject her. She instantly fell calm. Before Celestian could see anything else, he was taken out of the room by the reptilian creature and through one of the waiting doorways. As he entered this room, he squinted his eyes at how bright it was. He could make out more reptilian creatures that were seemingly engaged in activities near a control panel. However, it is what he could hear that was of most concern to the young boy. He could hear a woman scream in a room next door to where he stood, as well as the shouts of a man pleading for help, saying, "We're being attacked by monsters." As this was happening, Celestian noticed the two grey alien creatures had entered the room. Bizarrely, each was wearing a NASA-style spacesuit, complete with helmets on their heads. Even stranger, a human in a dark business suit also appeared. At this point, Celestian was on the verge of mental collapse. This mysterious man began speaking to the other creatures in the room, although he appeared to do so telepathically. What is particularly strange was that Celestian could also hear and understand this telepathic communication. According to what he could remember, the alien entities were searching for an alien device that had become lost in the muddy swamps of Georgia. They had, he recalled, found part of this device, but were still missing a section of it, and so another search was ordered by the human. Celestian was taken through several rooms before eventually stopping in a particularly busy part of the ship. All around him was a hive of activity, as if some kind of emergency was taking place. He picked up further snippets of information, most predominantly that their craft had been discovered and somebody was on their way to destroy them. At this point, Celestian felt a real surge of panic go through him, a panic he believed that he picked up from the occupants of the craft themselves. Another voice strayed into his head, stating that whoever was on their way, they were getting close. Then, on a screen on the wall, video of two United States Air Force fighter jets appeared. Several of the creatures turned to watch the screen. Celestian would later recall that it was so close up and detailed that he could clearly see the pilots' faces through the glass of the cockpit. He could also sense that these jets were approaching the alien craft and their intent was to attack and destroy it. Activity exploded all around the young boy, who simply stood in the room watching what was taking place. All the while, snippets of telepathic communication between the alien entities went through his mind. They planned to travel back in time by 40 minutes to before the radar had picked them up, and so avoid the ensuing confrontation. Suddenly, one of the entities picked up Celestian and strapped him to a silver table. He must have been administered some kind of injection, as he blacked out a moment later. When he awoke, the human in the suit was standing over him, and he and his family were being led back to their car. Although he wasn't certain, he had the impression that several experiments had been performed on him while he was moving in and out of consciousness. As they sat in the car, his parents appeared to be in apparent trance-like state. Things remained calm for several moments before his mother and father appeared to snap back to the moment. His mother immediately started screaming, urging her husband to step on the gas and get them out of there, which he duly did. As Celestian looked out of the rear window, he could see the object rise into the air and disappear into the sky. As the years went on, both his parents would refuse to speak about the night in question, or to even acknowledge that it ever happened. However, strange incidents would continue around the family home, including the sudden appearance of grey alien entities that would appear in Celestian's room in the middle of the night as if they had walked right through the bedroom wall. During these encounters, his parents would often awaken in a similar-like trance state as they were being led back to their car following their abduction. And on one occasion, a neighbour even claimed to have seen a bizarre object hovering over the top of their home. It would appear.
It's movie night at Cinemark. So grab your popcorn, kick back in a comfy seat, throw on your PJs, and snack like no one's watching. As they say, go big or stay home. It's showtime.
Trek just launched something they've never offered before. Meet the new Trek Borrego, Trek's first fat tire e-bike with a throttle. That means you can cruise using the throttle, ride with pedal assist, or switch between the two depending on how you want to ride. The MIC-compatible rear rack lets you securely click compatible baskets, bags, or cargo accessories on and off in seconds. The 4-inch fat tires give you extra confidence on pavement, gravel, dirt, and even softer terrain, making it a great option for riders who want comfort and versatility. If you've been waiting for a throttle-equipped fat bike, come check out the Borrego Plus at Shields.
That Celestian was the target of repeat alien abductions for some time following that initial encounter on a lonely Georgia highway. If the Falcon family alien abduction is true, it gives us plenty to consider, not least that a systematic and planned abduction program is taking place for reasons unknown to us. And what's more, there appears to be a human presence to these abductions. Even more remarkable, these alien entities that feature both reptilian and grey alien creatures have the apparent ability to travel back in time. On how many occasions might this have happened? And might this explain why these bizarre crafts are there 1 minute and gone the next? Above all else, though, we have to ask, what is the end goal of these apparent systematic abductions, and will they be for the benefit or the detriment of humanity? Did a woman suffer an attempted abduction at the hands of invisible aliens in France in 1950? Quite literally. An encounter known as the Black Hands case is without doubt one of the most thought-provoking and perplexing accounts connected to alien abduction on record. It is also one that is unique and an encounter that doesn't conform to other claims of extraterrestrial interaction, both of the times and in the modern era. According to the account, at around 4 p.m. on May the 19th, 1950, an unnamed woman was near the River Loire in Cours-les-Bas in France when she noticed a bright light, similar to a star, moving across the sky. She continued to watch this bizarre aerial anomaly until it came to a sudden stop. It remained motionless for several moments before rising into the sky, stopping and remaining still once more. Then, giving off a slight flash, the object disappeared high into the air with great speed. As perplexed and intrigued as she was, the woman, by and large, put the incident out of her mind. That is, until the following afternoon when she was walking along the river once more, she witnessed a similar light moving overhead, exactly as she had done the previous afternoon. This time, though, the light would come much closer to the woman. In fact, the light came so close that it almost enveloped her completely. Then, things turned even stranger and decidedly more ominous. To her shock and belief, the woman watched as two black-gloved hands emerged out of the light and reached towards her. She noticed how they had a yellow tint to them and were seemingly very strong. They remained where they were, as if ready to catch something thrown towards them. As she continued to watch them, and for reasons she didn't understand, she began walking forward towards the light. Almost as soon as she did so, the hands, with no visible arms, reached out and took hold of either side of her head. And what's more, they did so, violently squeezing hard on each side and shaking her head, and in turn, her entire body in a jerking motion. At one point, her head was pulled forward, and she felt it strike an invisible torso, but one that appeared to be made of iron as opposed to flesh and bone. At the same time, she could feel the air around her turning increasingly cold as the squeezing on her head began once more. The fingers, which felt particularly cold and unhuman-like, covered her eyes, nostrils, and mouth. She struggled to breathe and began to panic somewhat. Then she felt something akin to a lightning bolt run through her. Suddenly, she began to swing back and forth, and she got the impression that the black hands were carrying her somewhere. The arms that the hands were seemingly attached to remained invisible to her, but she could almost definitely feel them against her shoulders. It was at this point that the distraught woman began to hear a strange, muffled laugh that, while it sounded as though it was coming from a relative distance, she assumed it came from her invisible attacker. Without warning, they came to a sudden stop. A moment later, she felt a blow to her back, seeming to her to have come from an invisible knee. So hard was the blow that it forced her to the ground, where a pressurized force immediately settled on her and forced her to lay down flat. After a moment or two, she was moving around, this time being dragged along the ground. This continued for several moments before they came to a stop once more. After several seconds, she heard a voice speak in French. It said, "There she is, we got her." Another voice replied, but this one was too muffled and too far away for her to make out what it had said. Before she could contemplate anything else, she found herself being dragged along the ground once more.
Walmart Express delivery. As fast as 1 hour? Arguably the fastest delivery of the 7 seas. This just in. Local man gets hot dogs delivered in 1 hour. Express delivery!
My man, how about we just stick to the script?
Yeah, my bad. 1 hour.
No, you're good.
This went on for some time, causing her to panic again. Just as she thought she was about to lose consciousness, the dragging stopped. She was free of the invisible grip and found herself laying alone in the middle of a field. She quickly checked her purse and found that all of her money was still there. Robbery, then, was not the reason for this obscure attack. She then got to her feet, brushed herself down, and quickly scanned her surroundings, fully expecting to find the person who had dragged her here to be watching her. However, there was nobody else there, and she was completely alone. Or at least she thought so. Just as she was beginning to think that her bizarre ordeal was over, she noticed a section of the grass in front of her pressed down, as if an invisible foot had just stepped there. She braced herself, expecting an invisible grip to seize her. However, nothing else happened, and all she could hear or feel was the wind blowing around her. She looked down at herself and realized that she had cuts and scratches on her arms and legs, while she could feel what appeared to be a burning sensation on her back. What's more, all of her muscles ached, and she had a bitter, metallic taste in her mouth. As she looked around, she noted a light in one of the houses by the river. She started out towards it. However, after taking only a few steps, a blinding white light flashed before her eyes. She wasn't sure what had happened, but she had the impression that something had just taken off from the ground nearby and risen into the air with great speed. Now extremely frightened and confused, the woman made her way straight home. She would later report the encounter to the local police. A search of the field where she had found herself revealed strange scorch marks on the ground, and several of the trees had suffered considerable damage. However, despite these findings, there was no satisfactory explanation offered as to what had happened to the anonymous woman, and the case remains unresolved. Just what might have happened that evening? There are several possibilities for us to consider. Might it be that this unfortunate woman was the victim of an attempted alien abduction? If this is the case, why wasn't she taken on board a futuristic craft like many others who make such claims? And if aliens were behind this bizarre and unsettling attack, for what purpose was it carried out? It appeared that no experiments or communication took place. In fact, the whole episode seemed to revolve around the testing of some kind of technology that allowed someone or something the ability to physically take control of someone from a destination far away. Might we consider then that her tormentors, that late afternoon near the River Loire, were not of an extraterrestrial nature, but were in fact human? We might recall that the witness heard somebody speaking in her native French, stating that we got her. Might this suggest that she was the unwilling participant in the testing of some kind of futuristic technology, one that allowed a person to physically grab and then control somebody from afar? We might also recall that while the witness could hear the voice of whom she presumed was her attacker clearly, the reply she heard was muffled and seemingly much further away. Might this also suggest some kind of remote technology with some kind of bizarre out-of-body remote control experiment taking place from a secret location many miles away? We know, for example, that remote viewing has been the subject of studies